I'm gonna let you get right to it. You got our attention. Here's the microphone.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. My talk is not going to be that long. I usually apply for a talk so I could get the badge and then and I have to pay for the ticket. So that's the excuse. So I'll try to keep it under 10 minutes. What I'm going to be talking about is the case for the case that you can make to an enterprise for NFTs. This is something I've been involved with for several different years. And so what I'm going to share with you is a little bit of the secret sauce, kind of like our intellectual property around how we discuss NFTs with enterprises, right? And it's a whole different beast than going to artists and saying, hey, you can bring your collection online and sell it, in a decentralized manner. But you go to an enterprise, a telecom, whatever, and you present to them the idea of NFTs, and you get all kinds of responses. And so we've been doing that for several years, and we collected all the responses and tweaked them, figured out ways to respond to their responses. And I'm going to share some of that with you today, right? What we've kind of just accumulated knowledge. But before I do, I just want to thank the organizers, Jody, Cameron. If you're listening to this, you're probably not going to listen to this, but if you're there, thank you for bringing me back. I've been speaking at NFT.NYC since it started, February 2019. Every year I'm here. There was once, I think there was a year where they had it twice, and I was there for both as well. So I'm happy to be back here. So first, legal disclaimers. None of this was created by or used. I never used ChatGPT to create any of this content. So make that clear. And I am using ChatGPT 4, but this is all original content. You can Google this and you're not going to find this, right? You can ChatGPT this stuff and you're not really going to find it. So the 5 key points I'm going to present, and then I'm going to get out of here, is I'm going to imagine that you're the enterprise. Like I'm trying to pitch to you. Like what do you need to hear in order for me to sell you the idea of NFTs, right? And then you're the enterprise, and I'm going to tell you why you want the NFTs, right? Or you might be a vendor, or you might be an employee, or you might be an executive. But these are the things you're thinking about. If you're a vendor, you're like, I'm thinking about enterprises because I'm really thinking about stable revenues, right? I want stable revenues. I want this company to be my customer, right? And the employee's thinking, how do I not lose my job, right? How do I maybe get a promotion, but at the core of it is how do I just not lose my job with playing something as risky as NFTs? And the executive's thinking, how do I generate revenues, right? This is like, what's the business case for this, right? So first, I just want to introduce myself. Who am I? I do a couple of different things. My name is Jamiel. I run a couple of different companies. One's called Chain House. We do education and development services. That's my Vietnam team up top right. I run the largest blockchain community in New York City called NFTs.NYC. It's about 37,000 people. I teach at a bunch of different universities. I teach graduate level blockchain and machine learning, both on the technical side and also on the business side. I'm writing books. I wrote a book called Mastering Corda, a very technical book. I just finished another book on NFTs. I'll share that with you on the next slide. And I'm writing two more later this year, one on blockchain analytics, that's technical, and then with a book on DeFi with Columbia Press. And I do a bunch of other things. Also, I just joined a Indonesian heavy metal band. That's my backup plan. If crypto doesn't pan out, I will be in Indonesia. Coming this fall, I'm a co-author in this book from Cambridge Press. This is a handbook on the law and policy of NFTs. It was about 15 lawyers I wrote this with. I was the only non-lawyer, both from I brought in like the technical side of NFTs. This should be out like in August, September timeframe. This is the fake cover. My admin made the cover on Canva. The book is real. The book is going to come out. It's a real book. The cover is not real. Okay, so, and then I also like to throw in wherever I'm at that I'm now an expert in AI, in case anybody wants to talk about machine learning. Okay, so, so the 5 key points that I want to kind of bring up. And I'm in a boardroom often. I'm with banks. I'm with other enterprises, and I've fine-tuned how I talk to them. Right? I'm like, this is what I'm going to say, and this is what I'm not going to say. And I'm not going to cover what I'm not going to say. But most people know, like, don't talk about ideology, right? Don't bring up the word decentralized when you're in a boardroom of a company or a bank, right? And the first thing I say to them is, all business assets are NFTs. Right, and they're like, what? What do you like? That grabs them, right? And then, oh no, I'm lying. It's not all. It's actually most, right? Most business assets are NFTs. A lease, piece of property, invoice, anything that's an asset that a business holds value to, a credit default swap, is an NFT. And when I first say that, that typically shocks them. They're like, okay, what is this, right? What do you mean? I heard NFTs are like a bunch of monkeys, right? All this stuff, right? And like, no. Let's talk about the mechanism of NFTs and how NFTs work. What is that, right? And I tell them that NFTs are the default way of tokenizing. Let's assume it is the default and not that the fungible tokens are the default. We unfortunately have been brought up in the past few years to assume fungible tokens are the default way, and this NFT is this subculture in the blockchain world. And what I first say to them is that NFTs are the default. From one of our clients, we have a large telecom in the UK, there's a client, they have IoT devices, and the first thing they said is, what kind of tokens do we have? I'm like, NFTs. These NFTs will represent IoT devices, right? And that's the first thing you say, and then you make the case for why that's not true, and then possibly go to fungible tokens, right? And so that kind of like, okay, that's super interesting. I didn't know that you can consider all business assets or any of the assets that we produce or use as NFTs, trucks, cars, office space, desks, everything, right? So second is revenues lead to liquidity. A lot of people, especially in the DeFi space, focus on liquidity. Enterprises don't care about liquidity. They have liquidity. There is no liquidity problem in most of these enterprises. If they're going to sell an invoice, they're going to factor an invoice, they have liquidity to get the money to factor the invoice. If they need to raise capital, they have complete efficient mechanisms to raise capital. So I do not go into the room and say, hey, we can bring in more liquidity. It doesn't translate well. In most cases, there are some cases where it may make sense. What matters is revenues, and revenues bring liquidity into the picture. If you don't have anything that generates revenues, that thing that you're going to trade that generates revenues will never have liquidity, right? So revenues lead into liquidity. The reason you buy stocks is because some portion of its valuation has something to do with the revenues of that company, right? Otherwise, you're not going to buy that stock. So at the core and at the origin, revenues drive liquidity. So I don't bring up the case of liquidity. For example, when I was teaching a course at Zicklin Business School this spring, I had these graduate students. I made them write a 5-page asset tokenized. I'm done? Whoa, I was going to make it faster. Okay. Okay. All right. 3, tokenization will open new markets. This really, really works. I'm going to open up another market for you, right? And there may be a first mover advantage and a sustainable competitive advantage there. And that is music to their ears. Like, what? You could open a new market? And it's not done until it is, meaning that once NFTs as a tokenization representation of business assets flourish, you may be too late, right? You may be too late. So injecting that FOMO, right? And that always works, right? Right now, it's maybe not everywhere, like not all business assets are traded as NFTs, but the day it happens, you're going to be behind, right? And that's the case that I make, right? And so where will you be at that time? Final point, the NFT market is volatile. Everybody knows this, right? And I say to them to ignore that and look at the maturity that is occurring in the space. Forget the noise and look at the infrastructure that's being built, and that is your indicator of where this market's going to go. And focus on, focus on the ball. Okay, that's it. Thank you, guys.